Tami Overby, Vice President for Asia of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Well, thank you, Bill, and I want to give a special shout out to Andrea and Alan and the incredible staff at AmCham Taipei. I think they've done just an outstanding job here today. I'm delighted to be back in Taiwan and to share with you all today a couple of things. First, I want to talk a little bit about Japan's interest in TPP and the competing models for free trade agreements and regional trade agreements in the Asia Pacific and the stakes for American business today. First, Japan. There might be no better example of how successful regional trade agreements have become in the regional economic politics than last week's Prime Minister Abe's announcement of Japan's intent to join. As everyone knows, and I'm sorry Sam and all my friends from ACCJ, Japan has not been a model for free trade. It has some of the world's highest tariffs for agriculture goods and a huge thicket of regulatory and other non-tariff barriers. One of the world's largest commercially acting state-owned enterprises, and not a single comprehensive high-standard FTA yet. However, last Friday, after 2 years of deliberating, Prime Minister Abe finally announced that Japan would seek to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, this decision has the potential to be hugely consequential for Japan and the other members of the TPP. The coverage of the agreement now jumps to nearly 40% of global GDP. So quite simply, Japan's joining TPP is a real game changer. Japan's inclusion also means that 2 of the world's 3 largest economies are now working together to define a new, ambitious, high-standard trade architecture for trade and investment in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, the ambition of the TPP agreement is to be a true 21st century agreement that covers every product and every sector. It demands everything from the ultimate elimination of all tariffs to criminal penalties for theft of trade secrets. It is unlike anything Japan, or in some ways even the United States, has ever signed on to in the past. But let's be clear, it's a trade negotiation, and I have yet to see a perfect free trade agreement. Even the gold standard Chorus FTA excludes rice. But from our perspective, keeping the ambition high and making it as comprehensive as possible is in everyone's best interests. And Japan, like all members of the TPP, will join the agreement on the same terms and conditions. They will not be allowed to pre-negotiate carve-outs or request non-conforming measures. And if this deal had been done bilaterally between the United States and Japan, there is a real chance that the political pressure wouldn't have been strong enough to call for a level of ambition that we're seeking in the TPP. The domestic pressures in both countries might have taken over. Autos might have been swapped out for rice. Japan Post could have been carved out. But because TPP is a larger vehicle with a regional vision meant to be an open architecture that other countries can sign on to when they're able to meet the same high standards, Japan is, I dare say, while unique, less unique. Of course, the final TPP deal has not yet been struck, and Japan still must convince USTR and the other 10 partners that it will be able to do the hard things required and meet the high standard of ambition in the TPP. But assuming those talks go well, we could see Japan at the negotiating table in the next few months. Which brings me to my next point. All liberalization is good. But in the view of the United States Chamber of Commerce, TPP is the best opportunity out there. The Asia-Pacific has gone through a boom of preferential trade agreements in the last few years. In 2000, there were only 3 trade agreements, and today there are over 70, with another 80 in the pipeline. Recently, we've heard lots of discussion about the ASEAN plus China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India, or their version of, I think they're calling it the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or as some of my friends at USTR call it, ASEAN minus America, because it doesn't include us. But RCEP excludes the United States and offers a lower or easier standard of liberalization for the countries participating. They're called they're called inclusive. And to the chorus of anti-trade voices, the TPP approach of high standards and high ambition is the exclusive approach. Addressing behind-the-border measures and full product liberalization, according to some, discriminates against developing countries. But as you might expect, we have a different view. From our perspective, the evidence is clear that the deeper countries integrate their economies, both poor and rich companies alike, the more economic growth we all share. And if we build a free trade area of the Asia-Pacific on top of an ASEAN plus model, we will not be leveling the playing field for business. So we believe that TPP is the best available vehicle for addressing the issues that our companies have in their business models today, like supply chain connectivity and regulatory coherence. But having just returned from Singapore for the 16th round of TPP negotiations, I can tell you we still have a lot of hard work ahead. Some very difficult issues remain, and we're going to need significant political will and leadership to get this deal done. And we still have a long way to go before we reach consensus in many key areas. And it will be no surprise to anyone in this room that the issues creating the most amount of difficulty are the ones that the United States is advocating. High standard protections for intellectual property, new disciplines for state-owned enterprises, enforceable labor and environmental provisions, and the list goes on. It has become very clear that if we are to succeed in getting these countries on board with this vision for trade and investment in the 21st century, we have to do a better job communicating and explaining our positions. And we need to do it in a way that they see why it is in their national interests to do the hard things that we're proposing. We can't simply say we want better copyright protections because Hollywood wants them. Rather, we need to talk about their industries, developing IP that needs to be protected and fairly rewarded in third country markets. We need to engage local industry associations and people of influence in the local debate of why it is in their interests, and then urge them to engage their governments and their media in this debate. And this is where many of you in the room have a very important role to play in helping to socialize these messages, and the reason that these high standards are important to the countries where you reside and their future competitiveness. We've already started a process of reaching out to our counterpart business associations like the Singapore Business Federation and the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce and Industry and others to begin engaging local partners and allies in these discussions. But you are on the ground every day, and you will be even more important as you continue to engage these local stakeholders. There are many areas of commonality. Cross-border data flow, for example. There's the potential to find local private sector voices, even small and medium-sized companies, across a number of the TPP partner countries. We must find a way to work with these individuals and groups to come out publicly in support of policies that will give companies greater freedom in movement of their information. Investor-state dispute settlement is another area where we have had success in engaging previously silent business groups. But we need to do more, and we need to work more closely with you here on the ground. The communication between us and Washington and the AmChams here needs to become even stronger, and I would welcome any discussion with any of you on ways you think the U.S. Chamber of Commerce can be more helpful to you and your business in this very important region. Now, sometimes people ask me, what do they get for their U.S. Chamber of Commerce membership? And I think there are a couple of things that are relevant to you out here in the region. First, every important issue touching American business has some really smart people in Washington at the U.S. Chamber working on it. Whether it's tax policy, and yes, Tom Panansky, if you're in the room, the Chamber's submission on tax reform, we make the point that Section 911 makes the United States uncompetitive and it needs to be fixed. Thank you. That's all I get? Okay, that's all right. Or whether it's about energy policy or class action reform, the United States Chamber of Commerce is working hard to make the business environment more friendly and more level to American business. While no one wants to say the Doha trade round is dead, I think most experts agree it isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So we at the Chamber have been urging the U.S. government to fully support a robust TPP. And we first proposed the transatlantic FTA 3 years ago, and we're absolutely delighted when President Obama announced in his State of the Union this year that America and the EU would launch the first round this summer. I believe we're seeing the necessary pressure that will hopefully reignite trade under the WTO. And all of you should know that the Chamber's Asia team is very actively engaged all over Asia, even beyond TPP. Those of you who haven't met Jeremy Waterman, he's our Greater China expert, but he's also our Asia strategy person and is a tremendous asset to the U.S. Chamber. And all the hard stuff that the U.S. Chamber is doing on Asia, he does it. I simply take full credit for it. So feel free to say thank you if you happen to see him. And of course, all the other people back at home who didn't get to come on the cool trip to Taiwan, they're working hard too. But it's Jeremy and I that do all the heavy lifting. We also are heavily engaged in the ASEAN E3, the Enhanced Economic Engagement, and the SNED with China, and of course, full and faithful chorus implementation. Before turning back to Bill, I also want to flag for everyone that the 17th TPP round will be held May 13th through 22nd in Lima, Peru, and the Chamber will be there in full force representing your interests. And it also looks like round 18 is going to be in July in KL. And round 19 in September, we hear rumors it's going to be in Vancouver. I also wanted to share with you that as I travel around Asia, I just returned from Singapore, Jakarta, and Myanmar. I often hear colleagues talk about TPP, and they feel that TPP is America's plan to divide the ASEAN region between those ASEAN members who are part of TPP and those who are not. The other thing I often hear is that that TPP is meant to contain or to keep China out. And I want to dispel these myths. Nothing could be further from the truth. ASEAN, we would love to see every member of the Asia Pacific join TPP. It is an open architecture, and it is meant for countries whenever they are willing and able to meet that high standard to join. That means China, that means Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, everyone who's not a member of TPP. And let me address all my friends in Taiwan. We would love to have you in, as long as you can meet the same high standards and are willing to do the politically difficult things. I thank you all very much for your attention and look forward to your questions later.